Okay, so since I literally don't have anybody that watches these videos, I'm going to try to switch it up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make these videos a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit more advertiser-friendly. So being completely transparent on what I'm trying to do here. What we have here is a retro review is what I'm doing here. I have a few old school toys that I just kept for nostalgia reasons. They don't hold up against more modern figures like SH Figure Arts or Marvel Legends or DC Collectibles. They don't. I mean, they look good standing, but as far as like articulation goes, you gotta manipulate them a lot in order to get really some good stuff out of them. But that still doesn't mean that they're bad. I'm glad I got them, and I intend on keeping them. So let's get into the review. This is ProtoMan. But not just any ProtoMan. This ProtoMan is the combination of his NetNavi, who is like not his avatar, but he's kind of like Ash Ketchum, where you have Pikachu and then you have Ash Ketchum. He's kind of like his trainer. But in MegaMan Battle Network, the anime series, and MegaMan EXE, the game for the Game Boy Advance, which I believe transitioned over to the 2DS or 3DS. I stopped playing after MegaMan EXE 6 is when I stopped playing. But at the time I did play those games, I did want to make sure that I had figures that represented the game, because the game meant a lot to me. I really enjoyed playing it. So here he is. This is a cross fusion of his NetNavi and ProtoMan. It's at some point during the show, they get some sort of power up where the NetNavi, which is a real person, and the avatar in the game, like in the digital world, could cross and mix, kind of like Digimon with Tai and Agumon, and they made this hybrid. So getting into the articulation here, since you see the wide chest here, his arms don't exactly go up all the way around like that. What they do is they come up at an angle like that, but they do go around 360, as you can see. He does have a forearm swivel here that can go around 360. Nothing at the wrist. His head does go around 360. No, it's not on a ball joint. It's just on a hinge. Or not a hinge, but you know what I'm saying. And it does go around 360, but it's hindered a little bit by his hair. Speaking of his hair, get it out of the way right now. His hair is just like a malleable piece of plastic that's connected to his helmet. Just goes right in there. It's very secure, very snug. It's actually like a ring around. You can see right there. It's actually connected to a piece of plastic that's embedded inside of his head. So there we go. Here's the thing. Like, I'm not going to try to make any, like, stupid jokes or anything like that, because it sounds forced, and I don't have an affinity to do that sort of thing. If it comes organically, then it comes organically, but I'm not going to try to force it. He does have a waist swivel here that goes around 360, which is pretty nice for a retro figure like this, which is an old school toy. It does give you some more range as far as the more dynamic things that you can possibly poses you could possibly get this guy in. On this side, it's the same thing. Forearm swivel, arm goes around 360, etc., etc. His leg here, should I say, his leg goes back about that far. It can go back a little bit further if you push it, but I don't want to do that just because the toy is so old. And it goes forward to about there. No articulation in his leg whatsoever. The thing that's going to make this review a little bit different is the fact that I'm not going to go over like the color or the paint of this figure. The paint is very shoddy because it's an old figure, so it's very scratched up, but you can clearly see the colors. You can see the red, you can see the yellow, the purplish blue, the color of his visor. I'm not going to go over that because to me that's just a waste of time. But one cool feature about this guy that I really enjoy is that in the show, they have these things called battle chips, and you can program, you can install a battle chip into like your little handheld device, kind of like a Digivice, and you can download weaponry from the real world via battle chip to the avatar, the NetNavi, I believe they call it. It's been a long time since I've seen the show. But the gimmick here with these guys is that you can detach their arms and then install weapons that come. You can clearly see this one comes from ProtoMan, but they're interchangeable with all the figures. I think I have about 4 of them. Well, 4 figures, not 4 weapons, but they're interchangeable with each other. And as you can see here in the show, ProtoMan's whole deal was blades. He didn't have an affinity for using blasters or guns. He was a swordsman, kind of like Zero. He was supposed to represent Zero in the show. And that's one of the reasons why I picked this guy up. You know, I really like Zero from MegaMan EXE. So to have a representation of him in the EXE, a version of him sort of, like it's a character that pays homage to him, is something that I didn't want to pass up. As far as the details on the blade go, his other arm can do the same thing. You can just pull it off, and you can put on different weapons and swap them out. So it's a pretty cool little feature. But as far as the weapon goes, one thing that I will say is that it says China right there, and that's kind of unsightly. But we have, as you can clearly see, it's a red translucent plastic. It looks pretty sharp. It's not like garbage looking. You know, it looks how it's supposed to look. It's very reminiscent of the game and the show. So that's a cool little feature. And let me clean them up a little bit, and I'll get into my final verdict. I've said this in past reviews, and I'll say it here. If you are a diehard fan of this, I would say go out of your way to get them. But I believe it's Revoltech came out with a MegaMan EXE figure, which is much more dynamic. You can get them into much more dynamic poses. The paint's better. You get them. There's a lot of articulation in that Revoltech MegaMan EXE. But what they don't have is they don't have other characters. They don't have ProtoMan. They don't have Searchman. They don't have Whirlwind Man or Windman. They don't have these characters like Gutsman, things like that. They don't have those characters. So I'll say this to you. If you are a fan of MegaMan EXE, and you want something that's going to fill your shelf and is a good representation of the character that you may not necessarily find in other toy lines, I'd say pick them up if you can find them. They're very difficult to find, and some of them can go for a pretty price. I've seen some on eBay go for very reasonable prices, but you know, they're kind of destroyed. If you can get some that are sort of mint but not, you know, entirely perfect, like these are sort of mint but they're not entirely perfect. I kept them in relatively good condition aside from some aesthetic issues as far as like paint chipping and things like that. But if you're a hardcore fan, I would recommend checking them out.